What's up, everybody? Welcome to my review of the brand new 2024 horror film Abigail, directed by Radio Silence. Let's jump right into it. But before I talk about the very specifics that I did and did not enjoy about Abigail, if you are curious if you should go see it in theaters, which it still is in theaters right now, I'd say the 7.1 on IMDb is a pretty good indicator that most people are enjoying this film. If you're able to shut your brain off and go just enjoy some blood, and I don't want to say carnage, but just some blood and a decently fun, low-grade horror film, in my opinion, I think you'll have a good time. If you particularly enjoy what Radio Silence has been doing with the Scream series and what they did with Ready or Not, I think you might have a good time at this theater. It's not written by them, but it definitely feels like it's written by them in terms of character development and logic. But again, that being said, most people are having a good time at the theater. I, of course, did not have that great of time of theater at the theater, so I'm going to make this review fairly short and just jump right into the positives, the things I did like about Abigail. First being, it's fun to see a vampire film brought back into 2024. Of course, it's always fun to see some original horror brought back into theaters, and so that, of course, that aspect is fun to see. There's also a decent performance from the little girl that's in this who plays Abigail. I don't remember her name. I'm not going to look it up right now. She's pretty decent. And of course, there's a lot of blood. Again, I'll get into some of the negatives why I don't think that's as impactful as it could be, but there is a lot of blood. So there's some bloody moments here that, you know, if that's what you're looking for, similar to Ready or Not, which they do steal some moments from Ready or Not, you might have a good time. I do think the setting, the house, is pretty cool here. And I do think that some of the comedy stuff does work for the most part. I do also sort of enjoy the style that Radio Silence is going for with this. It feels very Ready or Not. There's a specific way of shooting that I don't think is very good, but I do sort of enjoy the feel of it in the film for the most part. They've got a lot of warm tones, warm colors, and that mixed with the reds and the blood does look cool. It looks pretty fun. Again, I think the setting also adds to that. I did also enjoy the majority of the music in Abigail. While I think it's poorly used in parts and a little bit too in your face, there are moments and pieces of the score that I do enjoy, that I do think fit with the film pretty well. My last positive is just kind of doubling down on what I already said, but I do think that this is a fun enough movie. It could have been better in my opinion, but it's not terrible. Even if you agree with me and it didn't quite do it for you, it's not a terrible film. You can go to the theaters and you can have a decently fun time watching a vampire film be back in theaters. Also, of course, it's cool to see the monster universe coming back, whether this is going to be tied to it or not, like the rumors said. My point with that is just to see some of the OG creatures coming back in new movies like vampires, and to see I guess a world that they're trying to create where these monsters are part of like crime and different things and people know about them. It's kind of a cool aspect, kind of a cool thing to see. Getting into the negatives about Abigail, and I'll try to keep this short. I just think that Radio Silence, even though they didn't write this movie, it feels like they wrote it. The same poor character development, poor character decisions, and poor logic, and just terrible pacing, and terrible script writing. The storyline is all over the place. The very beginning of the film, when we get the heist, it doesn't make any sense at all, and it doesn't work. There's a whole lot of like line delivery where people are saying 2 minutes, gotta get outside, 2 minutes, countdown, and they look like they're just in street clothes. They're not being stealthy at all. None of it works for me. None of the heist part in the beginning works for me. Of course, once you get to the end, you realize the heist was completely pointless also. And I know that it's supposed to be kind of like throwing you off guard, I guess, so that you can have a little bit of a twist at the end. But if you watch the trailer, it's like insulting to the audience, in my opinion, because we know what's happening. We know they're babysitting a vampire. So what was the point of the whole heist thing? Like we know from the trailer, even from the poster, you know that it's not going to go how they planned. So they could have just jumped right to that. The whole heist part in the beginning was absolutely pointless and really just set the movie off on a sour note where it was just terrible dialogue, terrible character decisions, and just really poorly done. Like just terrible heist. See, the acting in Abigail all around just stinks. I'm not a huge fan of Melissa Barrera. I know a lot of people are big fans of hers. I just don't think she's that good, and she's not very good in this. She's better in Scream. I like Dan Stevens. He sucks in this movie. every line delivery, everything he has to say, his character development, everything about him just does not work for me at all. It doesn't make sense in this world. It doesn't make sense in a heist or a kidnapping. I don't buy him as being a leader. I don't buy him as being like tied to whatever, like the crime past that he has. I don't buy him as a cop. I don't buy him as a vampire. At the end of the film, I don't buy anything that he has to put on screen. As I already kind of mentioned, the writing for this is just terrible. You get moment after moment that just contradicts itself. As I said in the trailer, as soon as they walk into the room and that guy says, "Y'all came highly recommended," that's just a trope that I absolutely cannot stand in films, where you get a bunch of people and the guy stands up on in front of them and goes, "You're all experts in your field. You're an expert in this. You're really good at that." And they just talk about how they're just so good and experts about everything. Instead of showing me any of that, they just sit around, get drunk, and do a terrible, absolutely terrible job at every aspect of their job. But even Melissa Barrera, and like you might say, hey, that was the point of the film, but she's our main character here. And we're supposed to like her somewhat, but she's terrible at her job. And she's got a really bad backstory that doesn't really give you much sympathy. So what was the point of that? You could at least make it seem like she's trying really hard to like overcome that, but it seems like she's just pretty lazy and doesn't do her job very well. And there's a pseudo romance with that other character, which I don't understand at all. But again, just contradictory moments where they'll constantly sit there and say, hey, we can't talk about personal lives, and then go and talk about tons of personal information, but just again and again in front of everybody. And I know you might say, hey, that was character development where, you know, she was good at like reading people, but they're paying her money to have them, you know, have her read them. And then they immediately turn around and go, oh, we shouldn't have done that. But to do it, like, it's like a super long scene where everyone's paying her. And she seems to be right. So if they don't want to give out personal information, why are they paying her to do that? It's just completely contradictory. And then after all that information, turn around and get drunk again, which is just stupid. And then say, oh, we can't do this because that's too like personal or something. I don't remember what the moment was, but right after that scene, they have another scene where they can't do something because they're not supposed to give out personal information. Also, as I already mentioned, they just suck at their jobs. Like this is genuinely what you write in your script, that it's a heist film and they're supposed to be guarding, but they all sit in the same room of this giant house and get drunk. How on earth is that guarding the little girl? How is that doing their job? And then they'll like go look around this giant house, but they'll just keep coming back to the same room. They didn't make a good use of the setting where they actually explored the house or saw any of these like creepy rooms or, you know, cool like sarcophagus underneath the house that was like a big mystery or anything like that. They didn't use that well. They didn't use the setting well at all. They just would go look around and then be back in the same room getting drunk 2 minutes later, not doing their job. The comedy works in moments for me, but again, for the most part, it doesn't make any sense. Like the logic doesn't make sense. So it's hard for me to hop on board the comedy when I just don't understand why they're saying the things they're saying and doing the things that they're doing. I do think Kevin Durant's character was pretty funny in moments. Again, he doesn't have a whole lot to work with, and his character was get drunk, be big, but then not really do anything with those muscles at all. The whole movie just kind of felt like it was written by someone who had ADHD, and they just were like throwing random things at the wall. They would just constantly be like, let's go do something. And then they would actually be like investigating. And as they're investigating, just say, this is going nowhere. Oh, this isn't working. Oh, we can't find anything. Like 2 minutes later, it was just constant dialogue of, oh, this isn't working at all. Oh, we're not going to find anything. Oh, we haven't found any doors. We're not going to find the power source. Have you looked? It's been 27 seconds. And then they'll come back and they'll like, go do it again. And at the end, you know, when they're like going to go attack Abigail and they all need to work together, Melissa Barrera's character is like, no, I know better. This isn't going to work, right? You guys go be stupid and attack her. They attack her. They get beaten up. And then she just does the exact same thing, but with a different tool. Now she's got a needle. But how is that different than just trying to attack her with something with 4 people versus 3 people? If she had just gotten the needle instead of waiting and tried to drug her while they were all attacking, like there was nothing that was useful there. It just was her being stubborn and stupid and less watching them get beat up by a little girl vampire. Just they could come back and Melissa Barrera could do exactly the same thing, but this time with a needle. So let's talk about the twist real quick. You have to watch so much of this movie leading up to the inevitable, them finding out that she's a vampire. And by the time you get there, it's not impactful at all because we already knew. So we had to sit through all of this exposition till we got to that point. And then they just hop on vampire super quick. So by the time we get to the twist at the end, it's meaningless and very predictable what's going to happen. I mean, obviously, they're all sent there for some reason, or there's some sort of person who's manipulating them and they're locked in the house. I mean, it's really obvious, but also it's just meaningless. Like, I don't care that they did something that like upset Abigail's dad. Like, why do I care about that at all? I don't. So what was the point of that twist? And then the very end of the film where we're supposed to think that Melissa Barrera's character may have turned after we just got a scene where the girl spent like 2 hours walking around the house and didn't turn. And then we watched her turn. She had this psychic connection or whatever with Abigail. And we watched her turn. And then like, we're supposed to be like falling for the fact that Melissa Barrera's character is turning, because that clearly was a moment that was trying to mislead the audience. And yeah, okay, she's also trying to fake out the guy, but it wasn't presented as a fake out where the audience is unaware of the information and the main character or the villain is not. It was presented as like a twist. She was playing like she had turned and it was trying to fool the audience, and it's insulting for us to think that she could have possibly turned into a vampire in that amount of time. And after we just watched someone turn into one, and we're supposed to think that that little 5-minute bite, and now there's no fangs, there's no transformation, there's nothing, she's a vampire? Or what are we supposed to think? What's the point of that there? It was just absolutely insulting to the audience. Have a little faith in your audience. Come up with something a little bit better than that so that we can actually be on board. And, you know, if you're going to try to just fake out the villain, write a more creative way to do that. It was just lazy script writing, super predictable. And that the fact that Abigail sees something in Melissa Barrera after she dragged everybody here basically to avenge her dad, and then her dad is not there taking care of her, so she's mad at him? Wait, what? I don't understand. So she's upset at him because he doesn't show up when he needs her, but she's doing all of this because they all were some people that like did her dad wrong? That makes no sense. And then she jumps onto like being friends with Melissa Barrera way too quick and being the super old vampire that's got all these skills that she can fly. But then Dan Stevens has been a vampire for 27 seconds and he's stronger than both Melissa Barrera and Abigail? What? How did that happen? I don't know where that came from. So Abigail's almost dying and she needs Melissa Barrera's character to save her? That makes what kind of sense? Lastly, I'll just talk about the gore in this film because I know a lot of people are saying, hey, it's a bloody good time. And yeah, there's a lot of blood, but I don't believe that blood equals gore or effective carnage, as you want to call it. Just a bunch of blood everywhere doesn't mean anything. In my opinion, the impactfulness of any of the actual like bites or the stabs or the attacks or crashes or any of that stuff doesn't really work, except for there's a few moments. One being that moment where he gets bit, Melissa Barrera's character is behind him, and you obviously know the character is bit and his head's like gonna fall off or whatever. That moment works pretty well. But besides that, a lot of the bites, they're just not like impactful enough. And just blood just doesn't do it for me. I don't want to just see blood squirting everywhere. I want to see impactful moments with lots of blood. So people just blow up like vampires, just like in Ready or Not. It just doesn't really work for me in this film. We don't get to see them sizzle. We don't get to see them like lose limbs, get stabbed. Like there's no like Fright Night-esque oozing or any kind of anything that really does much for me in this film. There's no real impactful like feeling, like it actually feels like they're exploding. It's just like a sound effect and blood, just like popping a balloon. And it's like just popping a balloon with a bunch of red dye in it just doesn't really do it for me. And yeah, there's a whole lot of blood at the end all over Melissa Barrera and all over Abigail. But again, it's not like they're like swimming through their friends or something. It's just a bunch of blood that sprayed everywhere. I don't know. It just doesn't really work for me. The moment where a character is in all of the bodies underneath the house, that moment was cool. It felt impactful. It felt like kind of gross. That's what I mean. There's no grittiness. There's no grossness. There's no like really actually good practical effects, except for in like a few moments when things are happening. It's kind of like they just get stabbed or bit and then they just carry on and it's all covered up. You don't get to see them really like limp or like really sit in the corner and bleed out or stuff. There's no moment where it feels like it really hurts them or it slows them down. And it's the same problem we have in Scream 5 and Scream 6, where characters get killed basically, and then they're up and running around the next moment. Blood does not equal impactfulness, and you need to have characters act like they're hurt or show us something or have it, you know, actually slow them down or impact the movie somehow. They just attack Abigail, get, you know, like bit, stabbed and whatever, and then like run away and run through the house again and then go attack her again. There's no like moment where you're like, oh dang, like that really hurt them. It's going to slow them down to this stand a fighting chance now. Melissa Barrera at the end of the film basically fights exactly how she did in the beginning of the film. And so does Abigail, even though she's half dead. I think that Radio Silence just has a real problem with that directing. And I can't exactly put my finger on the name of it, but it's that like rawness, that grittiness, the motivation behind the blood and the gore. And it just doesn't feel like anything's happening. You're just seeing a bunch of stuff spray across the screen. And again, as I said, that just doesn't work for me. So that's it, everybody. If you stayed through the end, I really appreciate it. I don't want to just like rip on Radio Silence and rip on Abigail. I know a lot of people are enjoying this film. I think that, as I've said in a lot of my videos, I think our standards for horror is so low that people just went and saw Abigail and they're like, yes, blood, vampire, good stuff. But the script is a nightmare, and it just, honestly, it should be better. I feel like it's okay to say, hey, it was good, but it could be better. I feel like people are almost afraid to say that movies can be better now. You can write a better script to go with this movie. I just feel like, I don't know, people are just kind of like coming out and being like, yeah, it was good time. And I don't know, it just wasn't that great. And it's kind of frustrating because I really did want it to be good. So again, thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate it. Let me know what you guys thought of Abigail down below in the comments, and what you guys think of Radio Silence. Like they're getting into a very specific style that I feel like they're leaning into. I really enjoyed Ready or Not. I didn't mention that yet. Ready or Not, I really enjoyed. I did that. That movie did it for me. Besides that, and I did enjoy Scream 6 for its moments. I'm not getting into like reviews about those films, but they're definitely going into like a style and leaning into that. And it feels like a style that they have been sort of like, hey, idea, and we'll just write a script around that. And we don't have to work on the script because we have idea, blood, and script will work itself out. And it feels like a style that they've been going for, and just add some humor and stuff. And it's just not working for me. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about what the direction that they're going right now. And if you feel like you agree with me, they need to step back and write some better scripts, or if you think they need to lean into that and just go ham, like go with some crazy, cheesy movie that makes even less sense. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate it.
Scared, I'm a big bad wolf. I never see the silver lining, only see the gold. I don't speak in caps, dog, everything bold. And I put that on myself, cause it's a life that I done chose. I said come through, you can see me on the west side. Now it's funny how they walking with it.